This was the most evil man in history. During the early 1900s, there was a lawyer named Automatic, who was known for never losing a case in his entire career and raked in millions over the years. But no one knew that he was actually sabotaging his opponents, which would lead to them not showing up in court, and he would win by default. This went on for years until other lawyers accused Otto of causing their clients to disappear. They started to realize a pattern that every time they faced Otto, their client would never be seen from again right before the court date. The police were also notified, but had no clear evidence of Otto being responsible. But just in case, they created a sting operation with a fake trial and defendant that they would keep 24-hour surveillance on. And sure enough, the night right before the trial, Otto was seen driving back and forth in front of the decoy's house. But unfortunately, he spotted an undercover cop and fled the scene. They attempted to chase him, but he was able to get away. He was never seen again by the public, and it was later discovered he purchased a ticket to flee the country on the Titanic.
So has the current pope always known he was going to be the last one before the world ends? Has the Vatican archives revealed a book that has successfully predicted every pope for the last 900 years, and it also tells us exactly when the world will end too. The Prophecy of the Popes was found in the Vatican archives in 1590 by Benedictine monk Arnold Vion, which contains the prophetic texts of St. Malachi of Armagh, a 12th century archbishop from Ireland, written during his time in 1139. It contains the Pope List, a series of 111 short cryptic phrases written in Latin that characterize every pope that came to be, starting with Celestine II in 1143, all the way up to our current Pope Francis, along with a 112th entry that describes the end of the world and approximately when it'll happen. Story goes, in 1139, St. Malachi went on a pilgrimage from Ireland to Rome to see the Pope, when he claims to have been struck by a revelation from God and fell into a trance all night while speaking Latin phrases. He reported his visions to Pope Innocent II, but the document remained unknown in the Vatican archives until its discovery in 1590, a whole 450 years later. But now, the real disturbing part is this list only had 111 Pope predictions, with 112th passage that described the Pope during the end of times. Pope Francis is number 112. After which, the list ends with, in the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will reign Peter the Roman, who will feed his flock amid many tribulations, after which the seven-hilled city will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge the people. The end. Judgment Day and the fall of Rome, perfectly lined up with Pope Francis. If that wasn't enough, inside St. Paul's Basilica in Rome, there's a series of portraits of all popes that line the walls from the first, St. Peter, to Francis. These portraits wind their way around the entire cathedral with designated plaques left behind for every future pope to be put on. And there's only one spot left after Francis, which, according to a centuries-old local legend, once that last spot is filled, the end of times will be upon us. Now I hear what you're saying. If there's one spot after Francis, doesn't that mean there's still one more pope left and this prediction is slightly off? Turns out there might be a lost prophecy in the pope list that got forgotten in time and not many people know about. Now, to be fair, these 112 predictions are pretty vague, and some of them are very loosely connected to their related popes. For example, the late Pope John Paul II was called De Labora Solis, which means the sun's labor through eclipse. JP2 was both born on a total eclipse, and his funeral was also held on a solar eclipse. The one about Pope Urban VIII was Lilium et Rosa, the lily and the rose. He was a native of Florence, and the arms of Florence feature a fleur de lis. Peregrinus Apostolicus designates Pius V, meaning pilgrim pope, which appears to be verified by his many journeys to new lands. Before him, no pope had left Italy for centuries. Pope Clement XIV was Urus Elox, meaning the swift bear, who had a racing bear as his family symbol. The other late Pope Benedict XVI, the prophecy says of him, Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olive. The order of Saint Benedict is also known as the Olivitans. Pretty loosely connected if you ask me, and it could very well be a case of backwards rationalization happening here, forcing the phrase to fit the pope by any means necessary. Or maybe the cardinals in charge of choosing the pope are somewhat influenced by this pope list and end up gravitating towards someone that will fulfill the cryptic words. But that still wouldn't explain the first couple dozen popes that matched, as this list was written in 1139 but wasn't made known until 1590, 450 years later, during which time 40 popes reigned, and these predictions match pretty accurately to each of them. The very first phrase of the list, ex cathedra Tiberis, from the castle of the Tiber. The first pope in the list was born in the castle town of Tifernum, similar to Tiber. Second phrase, Inimicus expulfus, the hunted enemy, refers to Pope Lucius II, who was driven out of Rome by the Senate. Third phrase, ex magnitudine Monto, from Monte Magno, refers to Eugene III, and Monte Magno was literally his last name. Even if the predictions are loosely connected or backwards rationalized, getting 40 in a row correct is an impressive statistical anomaly if they really are just coincidences, let alone alone the 112 of the full list. But some religious scholars claim it was actually originally written in the 1500s, not by Saint Malachi or even the guy who found the list, but rather by a certain someone named Michel de Nostradam, aka Nostradamus, which, if you haven't heard, was a French astrologer who's been largely attributed to predicting many world events in his book Les Prophéties from 1555, who happened to be alive just a few years before the Pope list was found and is sure no stranger to prophecies that have come true. On record, the Catholic Church neither publicly confirms nor denies this prophecy of the popes, and they're pretty quick to discredit anything they don't like they did with the Da Vinci Code. And they even just recently updated their guidelines on the supernatural in May 2024, affirming that only a pope can formally deem something to be supernatural, along with a whole bunch of other criteria on its formal definition and how to deal with it. Almost like they're preparing for something to happen. Now, what about that lost prophecy? Oral tradition claim rumors of an additional phrase on this list right before the apocalypse. Caput nigrum, which, relax, is Latin for black leader. The Black Pope is a term used to refer to the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, the head of the Jesuit order. Pope Francis happens to be the first Jesuit pope in history. Is he the Black Pope that comes right before Peter the Roman, as per the prophecy? But the big question here, when is this supposed apocalypse supposed to start? In the list, the pope that marks the middle of the prophecy is Pope Sixtus V in 1585, exactly 442 years after the first pope in the prophecy came to be in 1143. According to it, if this really is the middle, that would make another 442 years after Pope Sixtus until the final pope is revealed and the end of the world is upon us. 442 years after 1585 is 2027, the beginning of the end. Nice. And this year, 2027, is a hot one, with many end of times rumors surrounding it. It's the next 2012. You guys remember Javier, aka Unico Sobreviviente, who claims to be stuck in an alternate dimension with no humans around? Kinda looks like post-rapture to me, and he happens to be stuck in the year 2027. This guy, Daryl Anka, an international medium who claims to have made four-dimensional contact with an extraterrestrial entity called Bashar, says that Bashar told him we will make direct contact with alien UFOs in 2027, back in 1998. Oh, but he's just a crazy schizophrenic cult leader. Don't listen to him, right? In that case, here's ex-CIA officer John Ramirez claiming to have trusted official sources that state alien contact will be made public in that exact same year.
And I would say I've heard 2027 in a kind of an official capacity that I can't reveal. So I think I would say that people in the government are aware of something happening and that there's limited time, few more years to prepare the people, and that's what's ramping up.
Are these the aliens that start our predicted demise? More recently, this leaked document from an ex-OpenAI employee, ChatGPT, says that we will achieve AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, which is basically the point of no return, when AI learns to teach itself faster than we are able to teach it, or even ourselves, also known as the singularity, by 2027. If the aliens don't get us, maybe AI will. Watch out, world, we've got another 2012 to survive. Let's see how this one turns out.
The current case of what is happening in France right now. Dominique doesn't know it yet, but his wife is about to divorce him. They have been married for 50 years. They have 3 children together. They have 6, almost 7 grandchildren together. They're in their 60s, but Giselle, his wife, is about to divorce him. It's never an easy thing to tell your partner that you've been arrested. For what? There's these 2 girls at the supermarket. Well, the officer says there's 3 girls. There might have been a phone placed underneath their skirts as they bent down to grab items from the bottom shelf. The phone might have also been on camera mode and perhaps recording. He has been arrested for filming illegal secret upskirt videos of strangers at the supermarket. This 60-year-old man, he's crying, trying to explain to his wife that it must be the old age. It must be the madness. I mean, maybe it's dementia. There's no way that this is really him. He's never done anything like this for the past 50 years, so why would he start now? He's trying to explain this whole thing. It's just silly. Giselle is almost kind of relieved. Maybe it's all some sort of big misunderstanding. Perhaps he was recording something with his phone. He dropped it, and then a woman happened to walk over it, and in this moment of temporary madness, he just picked up his phone, saved the video. Giselle even follows her husband to the police station to sort things out. On the way, he does not seem anxious or stressed. This is all one big misunderstanding. I mean, surely. She waits in the waiting room. He gets taken into an interrogation room. After an hour, Giselle is asked to come into a room, and the officers have a few questions for her. Madam, what are the adjectives that characterize your husband's personality? Well, my husband is caring. This is exactly what she says. A very, very caring person, always ready to help. He's very much appreciated by those around him. We met when we were both 18 years old and shortly got married after that. And you would say that after all these years, you and your husband are still quite close? Well, yes, of course we experienced our lows, but we've always managed to overcome them. Do you have any friends in the area? Are you inviting them over often? Yes, of course. We have friends. We invite them over for lunch, sometimes dinner. We lead just very normal lives. The line of questioning is definitely getting a little bit odd, but it just keeps getting weirder. Madam Giselle, do you take naps often? How often do you take these naps? How often do you wake up in the mornings and you feel a little groggy? Do you always wake up feeling fresh every morning? How often are you and your husband intimate? Are you guys swingers? At this point, Giselle responds, oh my gosh, no, I wouldn't stand the hands of another person on me. I need emotion when I connect with someone. I am a married woman. I'm not a swinger. The officer looks at her kind of compassionately. He pulls out this thick folder of files. The images I'm about to show you will not be pleasing to look at. She's so confused. What images are you talking about? From the supermarket? She takes out her glasses, puts them on. In the very first photo she's shown, she sees a picture of herself. She's laying on her stomach on the bed, completely nude, unconscious. There is a stranger standing nude behind her. She does not know this man. Then another photo, another strange man that she does not know, and she does not remember these photos. Another man, a new strange man, each a different stranger, but she doesn't remember any of this. How could she not remember any of this? That's her bedside table, that's her lamp, those are her bed sheets, that's her bed, that's her bedroom. What are these? After arresting Giselle's husband, Dominique, for filming upskirt videos in a supermarket, they searched his devices, and in a folder on a USB, the folder is called Abuses. They find nearly 20,000 digital files. Inside that folder, they found new subfolders, at least 80 of them, each with names and sexual acts. The name of each man that came to essay his wife, Giselle, had their own folder. From 2011 till 2020, for almost 10 years, Giselle did not know that her own husband of 50 years was drugging her so that she could be essayed by strange men from the internet.
If you are inside your home with the lights out, do not look outside your window. Turn on your lights before you look through any window. Do not leave your home if you see a figure outside. Even if he is turned away, do not look at him. Lock all doors and windows before turning off all lights inside your residence. Hide in a small space and call authorities. Do not move from hiding unless you hear an unfamiliar voice. If you do hear a familiar voice coming from inside your home, do not move. He is inside. He is inside. He is inside.
Okay, so I will say I'm stupid for drinking. That knife fell out of that little fucking knife container thingy.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
What would your sight be if you didn't have eyes? Obviously, we think it would be black. Like nothing, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's not.
What? Is it like X-ray?
Yo, I don't even know how to explain it. Think about it real quick.
If I didn't have
If you
sight.
didn't have eyes, what would you see? Think about it. It's gonna blow your mind, bro. And it's not black.
Okay.
It's not black. Think about it. What
And
would
I've
you
never
see?
seen the world before.
Yeah, like you wouldn't see black though, because you wouldn't know what black is.
Gray?
I don't know. I don't know. But check this out.
Yeah?
So the best way of experiencing it, apparently you just close one eye and then look out the other. So what you see in the other eye, yeah.
Wait, what do you mean?
So
Let me
look,
see what
so close one eye,
Yeah.
and then try to look out the eye you just closed. That's what you experience. And it's not black.
What, just the same thing?
Yeah, it's like, it's absence of. That's what it is.
Whoa, no, that's
this is
weird to
mind
think.
blowing. I know, it's mind blowing, right? Because they don't see black. They've done studies on this. These people that are blind, they don't say they see black. They just see nothing. Because they don't know what black is, right?
This is the most intense body horror movie I've ever seen. It made me literally cry in the movie theater. I'm gonna spoil it for you. Get ready. We meet our main character, Elizabeth Sparkles, and she is a Hollywood star that is in her middle age now, and she is working at a show where she's doing like an exercise routine for other middle-aged women. They finish filming for the day, everybody tells her happy birthday, and she says thank you, and then she goes to the bathroom and she actually overhears her creepy male producer. He's yelling at someone on the phone saying that they need to replace her immediately, that she's too old for this, they need someone young and hot for their show. Elizabeth is of course devastated by this. She really loved her show and she really loves being in the spotlight. He ends up also sitting her down to tell her face to face, and he interrupts the middle of this conversation while he's telling her that women aren't good past the age of 50, mind you. He gets up to go talk to a much older man, saying that he's such a success, he's in the prime of his life, and then he's just gonna be staying on the TV forever. It's very subtle. On the drive home to her apartment, Elizabeth gets distracted while driving because she sees one of her billboards being taken down and she gets into a brutal car accident, but she survives. We see her at the hospital. 2 doctors are examining her and they're like, oh yes, you're going to be completely fine. You're going to be able to walk out of here, no worries. The main doctor leaves the room, but the assistant stays and says he has to perform one more exam on her, and he begins feeling up her spine and says, you'd be a very good candidate. Elizabeth is confused by this, but she doesn't say anything else, and he leaves the room and says, have a good day. She also notices that the assistant has a strange birthmark on the back of his hand. This will come back later. When Elizabeth is walking out of the hospital, she notices that he put something in her pocket. It's a flash drive that has a phone number on the back of it, and on the other side it says the substance, as well as a handwritten note that says, it changed my life. She's confused, but as she's walking away from this experience, she actually bumps into an old friend from high school. It's this guy named Fred, and he's so excited to see her. He says that she's just as beautiful as he remembers, if not more beautiful, and says that he would actually love to get a coffee or a drink with her sometime. And he gives her his number. He's actually very, very kind in this interaction. Elizabeth ends up going back to her apartment. She actually ends up drinking. She's not having a good time at all. She's very depressed about the events of the day. And she decides that she's going to listen to the flash drive and see what this substance thing is. And the substance describes itself on the advertisement as this miraculous thing that when you inject yourself with it, it produces like advanced cellular replication. It will make a second body for you. So you're gonna have the current version of yourself and then a second, much younger. They describe it younger, perfect, more beautiful, the ideal version of you. The only catch is every 7 days you will have to switch bodies. It's not 2 different people, just the same person going back and forth between 2 bodies. That makes sense? Good. She ends up calling the number on the back of the flash drive. A mysterious man answers the phone and she says she wants to order the substance. He asks for her address, she gives it, and then he tells her an address and then hangs up the phone. The next morning in the mail, she gets a mysterious package that has nothing but a key card in it, and it says 503. So she goes to the address the guy gave her on the phone, and it's not a very good neighborhood. It's very run down, lots of abandoned buildings, abandoned cars, and it leads her down a mysterious alleyway. Then she realizes it has a key card access point. She scans her 503 card and it lets her in. Once she gets inside this abandoned looking building, however, there's a really pristine, white, clean, like medical style room that has a bunch of white safety deposit boxes in there, and there's one that has her number, 503. She scans it, it opens, and it has this box that she goes back to her apartment to open. And inside the box, it has everything she needs. It starts with the activator. The activator is this green substance that we see right here. It says you use it one time and it starts the process. You're supposed to get rid of it after you use it. Also in the box, they have this long tube that actually goes both ways. It's for 2 people to use, and it switches the blood from one person to the other and vice versa. They say you use this to switch bodies. It also has this giant needle extractor thing that's called the stabilizer. And then it has 2 food packets. Each food packet is like a giant medical bag, and it has day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 worth of food on there. And the idea is whatever body you're not currently using has to be feeding off of that. That way they can like sustain life. She injects herself with the activator and the transformation begins almost immediately. She falls to the floor, she's writhing in pain, she's screaming. We see a close-up of her eyes and we realize her pupils have become two, and it's two eyes now that are fighting for dominance in her head. We see them sliding around her skull. It's wild. We then see her back is splitting up the middle at the spine and another body is like, getting out of her back. It's wild to watch. She blacks out for a minute, but then when she comes to, she stands up, looks in the mirror, and now she is in this body. And she calls this body Sue. Again, it's important to remember, it's still Elizabeth. It's the same person mentally, but now she is just in this body that she has named Sue. So I'm going to call her Sue when she looks like this. Sue looks down and she sees Elizabeth's body and it's all open up the back, and she realizes, I have to stitch this up by hand, which they show you the entire thing and you hear every pop when it goes through the skin. It's wild. She sews up Elizabeth and then she realizes a little while later she's starting to have strange symptoms where her head is hurting and her nose is bleeding, and she's like, I haven't stabilized yet. And the way to get the stabilizing fluid, she has to take that giant needle and stick it in Elizabeth's back and pull the fluid out of her for 7 days and inject herself with it once a day. Inject Sue with it, I mean. She also plugs the food bag into Elizabeth's body to sustain her for 7 days. Immediately the next day, now that she's in this younger body, she goes to audition for the show that's going to replace Elizabeth's show. And wouldn't you know, the creepy producer guy loves her. He immediately gives her the lead on the new exercise show that's replacing Elizabeth's. She tells him, hey, I have this really weird scheduling conflict because I have a sick and dying mom. I can only work every other week. And he says, we will do anything you ask. So Sue goes out and she buys a bunch of cute clothes, some crop tops, high-waisted shorts. She goes out and meets a bunch of people. She's having a great time in her new body. She immediately gets to work. She's filming for the show, and we see the show is not an exercise show anymore. It's saying it's an exercise show, but it's really just focusing on the sex appeal. It's a lot of close-ups of their twerking bodies and they're gyrating everywhere. It gets to the point where it starts to feel just like meat. It doesn't even feel like you're looking at people anymore. It gets really over the top just to emphasize how they only want her for her body. She even takes a picture for a photo shoot to promote her new show, which ends up being put right outside of Elizabeth's apartment building. 7 days are up, she switches back to the Elizabeth body, and Elizabeth is really sore because she has all those stitches in her back. She's been lying on the floor of the bathroom for 7 days. She's not having a good time, but she's really enjoying the experience so far. She gets a letter from the substance people saying that her refill pack at the deposit box is ready to pick up. She picks it up and it's just more food for the body, so that way she can keep going forever. But the next time she switches back to the Sue body, Sue ends up taking a guy home on the 7th night, and she wants to wait a few more hours before she switches back to her Elizabeth body, so she takes extra stabilizing fluid from Elizabeth's back when she's not supposed to, injects herself with it so she can keep going with this guy. But when Elizabeth wakes up in the morning, she realizes her hand has suddenly aged significantly, and it's because she got her youth taken from her by Sue the night before. She's very upset by this, but she doesn't want to stop the experiment. She keeps going, and she actually ends up calling Fred, that guy who talked to her at the beginning of the movie, and sets up a date for later that night. She also goes to the safety deposit box to pick up her refill, and she gets really scared while she's there because she hears a strange voice. And she runs into this elderly man who also has a key card like her, but it's number 207. And she realizes he has the same birthmark on his wrist that the assistant did at the hospital. It's the same guy. And he tells her, yeah, this is a really lonely experience. Is it starting to get to you yet? She flips out and leaves. But while she's getting ready for her date that night, she can't focus because she keeps seeing the picture of Sue outside of her window, and she's just looking at how she looks in the mirror, and she feels so insecure she ends up not going on the date. The next time she switches back to Sue, Sue is told that she's been picked to be the New Year's Eve star of the show. She's gonna be primetime, baby, and she needs to work a lot more, and she ends up taking so many extra days from Elizabeth's body. She just keeps pulling out as much fluid as she can. Elizabeth ages significantly the next time it switches to her, but she still doesn't stop the experiment. She begins to hate Sue and acts like she's a different person, even though it's just her. She begins to overeat, and she just completely lets her apartment fall into decay. When Sue wakes up and sees this, she's pissed, and she says, I'm never switching back to her again, and she extracts jars and jars of stabilizing fluid and stays in the Sue body for 3 months until it's New Year's Eve. But surprise, surprise, New Year's Eve comes around and she's out of stabilizing fluid, and she's forced to switch back into Elizabeth's body, but Elizabeth doesn't look like Elizabeth anymore. She is so different. completely hunchback. Her skin is rotting. It's got so many sores. She looks so uncomfortable. It looks like the most painful experience. Elizabeth wants to end the experiment, and she gets a termination kit from the substance people, and she tries to kill Sue, but it doesn't work. She stops herself halfway through, and she tries to switch back into Sue's body because she's determined to make it to New Year's Eve. But she ends up waking up Sue, and they're both conscious at the same time, and Sue ends up trying to kill Elizabeth. She is beating her to death. Sue goes to get ready for the New Year's Eve performance at the stage, but then she realizes her body is literally falling apart because she's almost killed the other half of her. She freaks out and goes home because she remembers she still has some activator left. She's like, maybe it will make a second, more perfect version of myself. She injects herself with it and she becomes the monster. Her body is now made up of like 7 different bodies. And of course, when she gets to the stage, they all hate her and they try to harm her. She escapes and ends up falling into pieces on top of her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
These are glow-ups and glow-downs in One Piece. Kaido most definitely had a glow-up. From how bro was supposed to used to look to now, yeah, that man had a massive glow-up. Bro had the Bermuda Triangle on his face. Look at that point. Oh, that's my glorious king right there. Big Mom most definitely had a glow up. This is how Big Mom used to look. I'm sorry, Big Mom fans. Tizzy, I'm sorry to you. But this is how she looks now, and that is most definitely a glow down. This is how Shanks used to look, and this is how he looks now. That is most definitely a glow up. One of the biggest glow ups in One Piece. Kobe, big glow up. Bro looked like a geek. This is how he looks now. Bro grew up in no time. Alvida most definitely had a glow up. I don't even want to say, but let's just say this is her now. And yeah, she most definitely had one. And let's just go to the Straw Hats. Usopp, of course, had a glow up. Bro is built different now on the time skip. And one more, this is how Rayleigh used to look. And this is how he looks now. Bro changes hair color.
If you enjoy your very out-of-pocket VHS films with an absolute massive dose of violence and cosmic horror, then this is by far the best VHS movie they've ever created. Look, in my opinion, the VHS films have been kind of hit or miss. Some of them have been alright, but then others have been absolute bangers. But I honestly cannot recall a time when I've watched the VHS films and they've all been really, really good. Now on this VHS go-around, we have a great selection of some amazing directors. And it always baffles me of how absolutely different every single one of these VHS movies are. And even in this case, when they all revolve around the cosmic, alien, and unknown. Now, of course, they're absolutely not perfect films and whatnot, but God, the creativity, everything is so freaking fun about these movies. You sincerely need to check out VHS Beyond. Because next to Terrifier 3 at Fantastic Fest, it's been the most entertaining film by far. Especially when you meet Gary. I don't know where Gary is, but I want Gary.
If you skip this French horror, you are going to regret it, I promise you. Hello and welcome back to part 135 of my series, watching every horror movie of 2024. Today's movie is Red Rooms, which comes out today, September 6th in limited theaters. Red Rooms is a French horror about this model named Kelly Ann, who is very intrigued by this true crime case that's going on about this serial unaliver. And as her intrigue grows, she is trying to find the missing piece of the case's puzzle. This movie is not only like absolutely stunning because it's like super dark and moody and atmospheric, but it is highly disturbing and twisted as hell, and it does all of this without being graphic. So people that don't like blood and guts, you are safe with this one. There is a scene in this movie that is so wildly uncomfortable and jarring that like you want to look away, but you physically can't because you need to see what's happening. And it's been quite some time since I've seen a movie do this so well. And again, it's not even bloody and gory. It's just unsettling. It's such a good blend of like horror, psychological thriller, and true crime. And let me tell you, it changes the narrative of true crime. And kudos to the writers for doing this because it's very thought-provoking. It's a very eye-opening take on this. And you will absolutely feel called out in this movie if you've ever had an ounce of curiosity in morbid subject matters. And honestly, it's a good thing. Overall, I gave Red Rooms an 8.5 out of 10. I loved this one. If it's playing near you, go see it. If you've seen it already, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'm curious.
This terrifying case is guaranteed to give you nightmares. This is the true story of The Exorcist. In 2005, The Exorcism of Emily Rose was released in cinemas. But did you know the horror film was based on a true story? Anneliese Mitchell was a 23-year-old German woman. Back in the 60s, she was raised in a Catholic household. Her family was really concerned when she started passing out age 16. She had no memory of what happened, and that made her family really worried for her health. They were really questioning what was wrong with her and obviously hoped that she would just grow out of it. Unfortunately though, things only got worse. She started experiencing convulsions and would have seizures that really terrified her family. They were convinced that she was possessed by a demon. Now, she was diagnosed with epilepsy after they took her to the hospital, and she was given medication, but this really failed to have much of an impact. If anything, things just started to get worse. She told her family of how frightened she was when she would see visions of the devil. She told them that she could hear voices telling her to rot in hell, and the entire family were then convinced that she had an evil spirit living inside of her. The poor girl was adamant that the devil was in her body. She frequently had terrifying symptoms and would rip her own clothes off. She would bark like a dog, eat spiders, and she even at one point drank her own urine. On one occasion, she bit the head off a dead bird. Her mum, in desperation, reached out to a priest to conduct an exorcism. Over a period of months, the young woman underwent 67 brutal, grueling exorcisms. These went on for hours on end. She was restrained and endured broken bones and ripped tendons. She became so unwell she stopped eating and drinking. Tragically, her body was in such a bad way that she did end up passing away on the 1st of July 1976. Her parents and 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide. The priests ended up being given 6 months in jail and 3 years of probation.
2011 till 2020, for almost 10 years, Giselle did not know that her own husband of 50 years was drugging her so that she could be essayed by strange men from the internet. Dominique would post pictures of his wife Giselle, all nude or in very skimpy sexual lingerie and in very suggestive poses. In each and every single picture, she is completely unconscious. In each posting, he would even offer to show videos of previous strangers essaying his wife to help get that initial arousal started. He did not ask for any sort of payment. This wasn't some sort of one-for-one situation either, crime for a crime. All Dominique demanded from them was that he be allowed to film the whole crime, the whole thing. Once these men would sneak into his marital home, Dominique would meticulously film each of the essay incidents. Some of them lasted 5 to 6 hours. What? They were all filmed, recorded, and logged, kept in his precious USB drive under a file titled Abuses. Giselle broke down when she saw those videos and photos of her. She said, "I was his thing." Upon finding out the truth of what happened for the past 10 years of her marriage, what her mysterious health issues were caused by, Giselle immediately leaves her husband of 50 years. She packs her things, leaves the house. Giselle's daughter said, "My father offered his wife to the first person who came along without even demanding protected. Sometimes he even forbade the wearing of condoms." Giselle would soon get a call of very bad news afterwards. One of the perpetrators was HIV positive. He had come to essay her 6 separate times.
So when she was being filmed, was the husband in the room too?
Yes, and he would watch, he would film, and he would call her hundreds of times.
This one is such a gem and a mindfuck. Let's do it. 1408 is about this writer, Mike Enslin, and he specifically writes about haunted locations. Like, he'll go stay in a haunted place and investigate and write books about it. But despite this, you can tell that he's super skeptical and he doesn't believe in anything supernatural. So Mike's in California one day and he's promoting a book and he decides to go surfing. While he's surfing, he gets taken out by a wave and washes up on shore, and eventually he wakes up. Also, while he's here, he gets this mysterious anonymous postcard from the Dolphin Hotel in New York, and it just says, "Don't go in room 1408. So Mike, of course, sees this as a challenge, and again, he doesn't actually believe in any of this. So he calls the hotel to book, and they tell him that that room is never available. He cannot book. But he gets his lawyer involved, and they have to let him book. When he gets to the Dolphin, he's confronted by the hotel manager, Gerald Olin, and he begs Mike to not enter 1408, and in fact, he starts to try and bribe him at one point. He tells Mike that there have been 56 deaths in 1408, and people have tried, but no living person has lasted inside that room for more than an hour. So Mike, again, completely not believing any of this, is like, "Fuck you, I'm going." So he makes it up to 1408, and when he gets in there, he's like, "This is it." Now, he has this little tape recorder that he records everything on, and he's explaining how, the room just seems boring. And he's in there for a few minutes, and he's like, "Yep, nothing supernatural yet, talked it up for nothing." But all of a sudden, the clock radio turns on by itself and starts playing the song We've Only Just Begun. And it starts a countdown of 60 minutes. So Mike sees this and he thinks that Olin is playing a joke on him, and he's like, oh yeah, nobody's lasted more than an hour, like that's what you're trying to do. But eventually more unexplainable shit starts to happen. And Mike straight up starts to see ghosts from the hotel rooms past. Mike also starts to see videos playing and images of his daughter Katie, who passed away from cancer. And at one point when he's looking out the window, it slams shut on his hand and injures him. So now he's had enough and he tries to leave, but the door will not open and the doorknob physically comes off. So he tries to call the front desk and he's like, okay, like you guys win. I'm hurt. I want out. I'm checking out. But the voices on the phone keep saying weird shit to him. Like he is clearly not talking to anybody at the front desk. At one point, he looks out the window across the street and he sees this figure in the building across. But when he looks closer, he sees that it's himself. And behind him is this figure. And it turns out this figure is actually behind Mike and attacks him. At one point, Mike tries to exit his window and walk on the ledge to the next window, but suddenly all the windows disappear and they're gone. So Mike continues to make all of these efforts to leave this room to no avail. He tries to go through the grates, he tries to bang on the window to get anybody's attention. And at one point, the temperature in the room starts to rapidly decrease and it literally starts snowing. So Mike turns on his laptop and he has this idea to try and call his estranged wife Lily, and it works. He gets through to her. And he tells her, like, send the police to the Dolphin. I am in 1408. Something is happening. But before he can say anything else, the sprinklers in the room turn on and short circuit the computer. And Mike watches as his face distorts and he starts saying something to Lily that he's not actually saying. And he tells Lily to come up to the hotel room herself and see it for herself. Obviously, that's the room trying to bring more victims in. At this point, the room starts to shake rapidly, and there is this portrait of this ocean scene above the fireplace. And all of a sudden, it bursts off the wall, and water starts rushing from it, and the room floods. So Mike starts drowning in it, but suddenly he wakes up, and he is once again on the beach after that surfing incident in California. Mike ends up in the hospital where Lily comes to visit him and he explains everything that happened in 1408. And she tells him, like, obviously that's not true. You never went to New York. You were in California the whole time. This must have just been a nightmare. So Mike goes back to his regular life and he actually starts to write a book about his dream experience in 1408. But when he goes to the post office to send out the manuscript, he recognizes the people in there as employees that he saw in the hotel. And all of a sudden, they take out these tools and start smashing everything and ripping up the floors and ripping out the ceilings. And sure enough, it reveals that he is still stuck in 1408. This time, he is confronted by the spirit of his daughter, Katie. And eventually the hour countdown that was on the clock runs out, but it resets to another hour. And at this point, Mike gets a call from the quote-unquote front desk. And he asks them, like, why haven't you just killed me yet? And they tell Mike it's because we give our guests free will. So you can either choose to take yourself out, or you can keep reliving this hour for all eternity. And Mike turns and sees that there is a noose hanging in the room. However, he refuses to give up that easily. He takes this bottle of alcohol that Olin had given him and sets it on fire. And he smashes it, which causes the whole room to burst into flames. As this is happening, we see that Lily is approaching the hotel to go help him, and she looks up and sees the room explode. And Mike lays there surrounded by flames, laughing, knowing that he's won. He has victory over this room. We see the hotel getting evacuated. Meanwhile, Olin is sitting in his office and to himself is praising Mike for his actions and for destroying the room. Now, there are 4 different endings to this movie, but I'll tell you the theatrical one. Firefighters break down the door and end up pulling Mike out of the fire, and he survives. He and Lily reconnect and he tells Lily all about his experience in 1408, but she's a bit skeptical. Until Mike is looking through a box of some of the belongings that were taken from the room and he finds his cassette player. And when he presses play, he and Lily both hear Katie's voice coming out of it, which confirms that everything he said was fucking true.